Welcome back to the Relationships Made Simple for Men podcast with me, Bryce Bauer. Today, I'm just going to answer some questions. These are a collection of the most common questions that I get asked. The first question is, what's the most common communication mistake couples make? My answer to that would be that there isn't a structure. There isn't a plan. How do we expect to get from point A to point B? Point A usually being disconnected and feeling misunderstood to feeling connected and feeling understood. What most couples do, because they don't know any better, is to just start talking. They don't outline any boundaries for the conversation. They haven't identified a shared goal. They haven't agreed on a process. This is why a lot of conversations don't go anywhere, or they make things worse. Because there's nothing more frustrating than spending an hour with this person that you love and not being able to connect to them. A more specific mistake that couples make is simply the speaking listening dance. So on the speaker side, we don't want to give our partner a whole TED talk about what we feel and our story behind it. We just want to give them the relevant details initially. So when this happened, I felt this. Your partner should be able to understand that. And then on the listening side, instead of thinking about our rebuttal or how we can fix it, the first move is just to acknowledge what happened. You have to come to some shared reality. Okay, that makes sense. When this happened, you felt this. Usually, if you're using a structured process, it's helpful that one person goes first. So we're just putting attention on this person until they feel understood, and then we can switch. But what I see when couples are communicating ineffectively is that they're both kind of talking at each other or disagreeing, getting caught in the weeds. If you have a process, that's less likely to happen. The second question I get asked pretty often is, how can I bring something up, something difficult, without my partner becoming defensive? I've got good news and bad news on this one. The good news is that there are ways to communicate with our words, body language, and tone that are going to help soften the space. The bad news is your partner may still get defensive. We're working with their spectrum of defensiveness, but there's even a way to work with that. And if you think your partner is going to get defensive, it's worth thinking about how to work with that. So I'll give you an example. I recently met with someone who wants their partner to get help for their angry outbursts. They're shutting down and their increase in drinking. The drinking isn't out of control, but it may be hidden. And to sum all this up, their partner is probably depressed, struggling emotionally. And the partner I'm talking to is exhausted, confused. They want their partner to get help. So here's what I told them. First, in their case, they did have a part in the pattern. So my advice was to lead with that. It would sound something like, hey, do you have a second to talk? I've realized that I do X, Y, and Z. I bet that doesn't feel good for you. Here's what I'm going to do to work on that. Okay, so that's a way to soften the space. Their partner's probably feeling seen. They're like, yeah, who wouldn't want their partner to take some ownership and provide a plan? Now, the second part is where I like to introduce the idea of a hard back and a soft front. So the hard back, you can think about it like the backbone, is we have to be honest and direct. We deserve to be honest with ourselves and honest with our partners. You want to be able to stay firm in trusting that I'm not backing down because this is important. The soft front is being able to communicate that in a way that's more vulnerable and true as well. So instead of saying you have a problem, you need to fix it, it will sound like I'm concerned about you, because that's what's really true, right? That's what's at the heart of the matter. I'm concerned about you. I'm concerned about our relationship. I'm afraid things won't get better. This is coming from love. In most cases, that's a better way to communicate. And if your partner gets defensive, it's probably not worth trying to explain yourself more and more and more. That's what people do when they're anxious. I'd suggest sticking with the key points. I'm concerned about you. I want you to get help. Here's what I'm going to do to help me. My hope is that this will help us. You may also have something in mind that will help the relationship more directly, like doing couples therapy. But either way, if you have something difficult or big that you want to bring up, take some time with it, get clear on what it is that you want to communicate, and then go for it. I wouldn't worry too much about doing it wrong because people can get caught up in their fear about the reaction, so much so that they're paralyzed. Think about it in simple terms. There's probably like 3 sentences that you want to get out, maybe even just one. You can do that. Another question I get is, why do couples often feel like roommates instead of partners? Here's a simple way to think about it. It doesn't take much work to be roommates. You just have to live together. Maybe you two divide and conquer chores and parenting. That may take some work, but the biggest difference is that partnership takes a lot of work. Couples often underestimate this. They keep piling more things on to their life, and that time that they used to have together shrinks and shrinks. They put the marriage on pause, or they live with unresolved conflict and resentment, which slowly turns them into just roommates. This is the default mode when we don't know how to do partnership or we don't have the time and space for partnership. Now, I'm not saying that there won't be periods of time where you may feel like you have to just take care of yourselves, but you want to think about it like a bank account. Every day that you don't invest in the partnership, you withdraw a little bit from the partnership account. This isn't something we do consciously. It's something that our attachment does. For instance, if Jenny or I needed to be away from each other for a month, even if we left in a good space, I guarantee you we would be out of sync. Even if we were excited to get back together after that month, it would take a lot of reinvestment to get back to where we were. And some couples are okay with not having a lot in the relationship account. Think about some traditional relationships where one partner works outside of the home and travels. They might be physically away for half the year. Now, they could have a good relationship on many levels, but there's just no way that they would be able to stay deeply in sync with each other because they're adapting and changing along the way. You could think about it like this. One partner is away, feeling some stress with work, and then what do they do to cope with that? They will have to learn to deal with that on their own. And their partner could be on the other side of the country going through a difficult period with the kids or friends or family. And they also have to learn to adapt and deal with that on their own. So when they come back together, unless you can put a lot of time into getting up to speed and reconnecting, there's going to be parts of each other that we don't get to know. Okay, so let's move on to another question. This speaks to the gender divide. What do men most commonly misunderstand about women in relationships? My answer would be that they are way more afraid than we realize, both emotionally and physically. I'm not looking at fear as a weakness here. Actually, I see it much more as a strength, which is another thing that men can get wrong about women. If they feel anxious, if they worry, that's a weakness that should be worked on. But here's the thing about that. Women are way more likely to notice and bring attention to disconnection in the relationship. Men are good at putting their heads down and ignoring the problem. They'll get by without connection, at least for a while. And so women are often ringing the alarm bells. They're afraid that things are going to get worse or not get better. And this isn't an irrational fear. It's real. Men tend to underestimate how scary this is for women when we shut down or dismiss or get frustrated. Men tend to be unaware of how this behavior really magnifies women's fear. Oh shit, we really can't talk about things. He is not open. Instead of being able to soften and lean in, seek to understand what it is she's pointing to. And this can come up with physical safety too. I got a side-by-side about a year ago, and I was intent on getting out there in the desert and riding it and exploring, which I do. And I didn't really want to ride with other people because I don't want to be eating dust. I like to just kind of explore. So Jenny brought it to my attention that she was worried about me. And the reason that she was worried is that I'm going out into these remote places. I mean, really remote. And if something happens, I probably am not going to have cell service. Therefore, this could turn into a dangerous emergency quick. And when she brought that up, I was able to see that I should actually have a plan. I should tell her where I'm going. I bought a GPS device. It's all good, actually. We worked through that one. But this just goes to show how much I was underestimating, not understanding how she's thinking about mine and our safety. Yeah, she could just try to be chill about it and bury her fear, but Jenny doesn't do that. As men, sometimes we have to put ourselves in our partner's shoes, really actively, consciously try to do that so that they don't have to carry all the weight. And even if Jenny's concerns were less rational, which sometimes they are, this is more about the connection and the understanding. So you might not know how nervous your wife feels around you when you have big feelings, or how worried she gets about you when you're out doing stuff, unless you ask, unless you take some time to think about it. The next question is the flip side. What do women most commonly misunderstand about men? I'll try to go deep with this one. This applies to me, and I think it will apply for a lot of men. We feel a lot more than we're able to communicate. I do think sometimes women look at men, this is one way that they objectify them, and they see a caricature of a person who doesn't really have feelings. Now, I know through the course of history and our own abilities, there's a reason why that narrative is there. But I do think women often fail to see how deeply we feel as men. Sure, we might be confused about what exactly we feel, but there's still a part of us that wants to be deeply seen. Take, for instance, this idea that men would take a bullet for their wives or their kids. We could analyze that statement and create a story that men just care about pride and ego. But I think what men are really getting at there is the amount of love they feel for the people in their lives and the lengths they would go to protect them. And the situation is a representation of that. I think as men, we also have a intuition that we're always battling some type of competition energy within the world, which can create a lot of insecurity. Think about how society feels about a woman who's completely alone. There's a feeling that we want to go towards that person and help that person. But with a man, it's like, well, there's probably good reason for that. As men, we know that a lot of our worth in society is based on what we can create and what resources we can bring in. That's tough. I'm not saying we have to buy into that story, but there's a reality to it. The world is pretty tough on men, and a lot of that comes from other men. I don't think women see this as much, but we do, living in the world. That's my answer. I know some people might disagree. Okay, so let's do one final question. How much of our relationship struggles come from our family of origin? Based on what I've read and what other experts are saying, I'd say pretty much all of it. In fact, this doesn't just stop when we turn 18, it's still playing out in our adult life. For most of us, our brain developed in the presence of two parents or two parent figures, maybe more. And that was all we had to go off of. We took their words as truth. We adapted in whatever way we needed to get our needs met, better or worse. And by the time we can think for ourselves more, our brain is already wired. So if you haven't done much inspection of your wiring, learned how to reframe your experiences, or confronted your childhood while you're in adulthood, you're still working with the same software. So on one hand, almost all of our relationship struggles come from our experience of our family of origin, and we can radically change the way that we relate to each other and do intimacy and love ourselves. There's still flexibility and plasticity there. It's kind of like the hardware is still there, but we can update the software. All right, well, I think that's enough for today. Guys, if you're on the fence about attending a men's retreat, making a big move to improve yourself, I'll just say this. I've been there many times. I've gone to many retreats and workshops, traveled, been around strangers. that whole thing. And I'll say that it sucks to stay on the fence when you know what would be best for you. So if you know that it would be a good idea to attend a men's retreat, get out of your comfort zone, learn more about relationships, I'd suggest making the jump now, because it sucks to realize you missed an opportunity when your gut was telling you it was the best thing for you. And if your gut tells you that it's not the right time, you're not ready, that's okay too. For those of you who feel really on the fence, and it's just fear holding you back, I'd suggest taking some time with this decision. One of my theories in life is that fear should not be the only reason I don't do something that's going to be good for me or do something I really want to do. I want to face that fear. The next retreat is September 25th to 28th in St. George, Utah. You can email me at bryce@brycebarr.com. I can answer your questions, and it's super easy to get signed up. I'll see y'all next week.